I'm Brenda Jones, and I am with NARSOL. I'm the executive director of NARSOL. And Amber here on my left is executive director of, I'm going to read it wrong because I grabbed the wrong one, Restorative Action Alliance, right? Yay! Okay. And also has the podcast that you can see out there in the front. And we have Janice Bellucci on my right, who is still executive director, I hope, at the ACSOL, and also a civil rights attorney, as you've heard. So with that very brief introduction, we're going to be diving in and talking about building a strong coalition for change. QR code hiding in the bottom, so if you're still scrambling for your phone, you can still catch up a little bit later. All right, so you should start seeing your first question here. And you are welcome to answer. So just what comes first to your mind when you think of coalitions? And you'll get some choices here, and as you select what comes first to your mind out of those choices, we'll start seeing the results. I think this is way cool, so pardon me for being geeky, but I hope you guys also enjoy it. First time I encountered this, I went, wow. So we're seeing some things. It's hard to read them when everybody's jumping them all in there. We've got collaboration, partnerships, working together. Yeah, Amber, you two that can lean in because it's easier to look at this than turning around backwards.
Doing good.
Yep. Working together. Support.
Aligned.
Networking.
Teamwork.
Collaboration.
Yep.
Getting smaller and smaller.
Smaller, so we have more things. We've got advocates, like-minded, yeah. Lots of group noticing there. I think the larger ones means that more than one person has mentioned it. So we've got teamwork, collaboration, groups. Change, working in common, working together. Common goals. All right, so I'm seeing a lot of good stuff here. Would either of you two like to just comment on what we're seeing here in terms of what we're working on today? I'll start a little bit with Janice, and then we can.
I'd just say it's a rich field here of information, and I think everybody's on point. When we did it, the three of us did it to practice, I put bananas here. So I don't see anybody putting bananas down.
I appreciate everybody being on point.
Everybody's taking it very seriously, like for the assignments. Yeah, it looks like a really vibrant group of ideas that are interlocking together.
I'm still not hearing Amber quite as much through our speakers anyway.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. Not me.
I can talk loud.
You're good.
I think it's just not close enough to my mouth.
All right. So the value of coalitions. We're ready for yours now, Alan. We're going to have a handout coming around. Thank you. All day long. It's like, what's that word? Yeah, we've got a handout coming around about the value of coalitions. And one of the things that we wanted to start with, this is something that Amber put together along with Emily Horowitz, who we saw yesterday. Is she here today? There you
She's
are.
over there in the audience.
They've done a really great job. So we're going to talk a little bit about the coalitions that we've been involved with. And I was going to get us started as we begin. My own experience with coalitions, I didn't really think I had a lot of experience when I got started. NARSOL was very organic in terms of its growth, so we didn't go out saying we're going to have a coalition, but I realized just the past year, a board member said, Brenda, you've been running one, and I stopped and I thought, you're right. NARSOL is actually made up of a lot of relatively independent state organizations who run their own show. They've got their own names. They're doing their own thing. And NARSOL is, actually almost like a partner in many ways with these groups. We help them get together and do, we work together on some common things. So once that clicked in my mind, I started researching it. And then as we got ready for the this workshop, I did a little more deep dive into what is a coalition, what isn't a coalition, and starting to apply some of that to the groups in NARSOL and how can we benefit more from it. So Janice, do you want to share a little more about what you see in terms of what a coalition is, what it's not?
Sure. Well, what coalition is not to me is that we all have to sing the same tune at the same time. And I guess I believe in harmony. So maybe if you think of a barbershop quartet, they're not always singing the same note at the same time. And I think that's really important because we all have strengths, right? And so one organization might have one strength, a different organization has a different strength. And if we try to make each other do the same thing at the same time, it's probably not going to work. Or we're not going to have the maximum strength we could have to address the problems that we have.
Great. Amber, you want to continue in terms of purposes of coalitions, what makes a good one, a bad one, et cetera?
So I think, can you hear me? Okay. So I think that just to sort of piggyback off what Janice was saying, the purpose of coalitions is really to build power, right? So we have a lot of strengths in the movement. And so when you think about what you can do and the power of multiple organizations, multiple people working together, what we heard, earlier today and what we know to be true in all of our work is that we really need to build power, get closer to people who are in power. We need to change narratives. And if there are multiple organizations, multiple voices working together to do that, that makes us stronger than we are on our own. When we have our individual organizational struggles, right, if we are not working in coalition and you have a really dynamic leader and that dynamic leader gets sick, or the opponents would like nothing more, right, than to just knock out the leader and the whole thing crumbles. So it's really exciting when we think about all of the people who are in this movement and all of the organizations and the power that we can all build together. So it is important to remember that that does not mean that we're all doing the same thing. It does not mean that we agree on every single thing. And also within coalitions, we want people in coalition with us who their mission might be served if we achieve the goals that we're looking for, but that might not be their main mission. They're friends. And we want those people in coalition as well. So I think those are all important things to think about when we're talking about what is the purpose, what it is, what it isn't. It is not a kumbaya, everybody holding hands, everybody loves each other, but we do need to build trust between each other in order for us to work together and build that power together.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next questions, also wanted to have an opportunity for each of us to share a little about some personal experiences that we've had within our organizations in terms of a coalition or alliance between groups that has helped to achieve some positive outcomes in our past. And Janice, we were going to start with you.
Sure. As a litigator, coalition is not the first word that comes to my mind. All right, so I've had to learn over the years, and I've been doing this about 14 years now. And the fact is that I really learned the value of a coalition when we, as an organization in California, tried to create our first tiered registry. And we did it in only 6.5 years. I've been told in our state capital, that's pretty fast. Seemed really slow to me, kind of like a glacier moving, but the only way we got across the finish line, the only way we got a tiered registry in California was we joined with some unlikely partners. So in order to get across the finish line, we were working with victims' rights groups. We were working with the District Attorneys Association. We were working with people, that we don't normally talk to. And I want to tell you that there was a point in the conversation, however, when we were told not to come to the table. We're talking, no. If you say you want a tiered registry law, it's not going to happen. And I said, excuse me? We are the reason for the tiered registry law. And I actually said the following words in front of our sex offender management board. I said, would you have ever asked Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. not to talk about voting rights? Of course you wouldn't. So don't be saying that in front of us either. And so, you know what? That person shut up, and that was our sex offender management board, and before you knew it, we were joining hands with them, or at least joining arms with them, and we got across the finish line. I'll tell you, the political process is imprecise. We didn't get exactly the tiered registry law we want, but guess what? We're going back next year, and we're joining arms again with some of the same players, not all of them, but some of the same players. And I do believe that next year they will improve the tiered registry law, which will mean more people can petition.
Yeah,
for
or you'll
removal.
start for another 6-year process, right?
Yeah, well,
We
no, we
hope not.
started in 17.
Oh, yeah.
We started in 17.
Okay, so now we're launching into further processes. Okay. My experience outside of what I was just describing with NARSOL is that in Maryland, our organization, FAIR, has been involved with a group that is a coalition of other criminal justice reform groups, impacted individuals. Some of them are focused more on reentry. Some are more focused on issues inside of prisons. Others are focused on sentencing laws. So it covers the whole range. And so we joined up with them. They started, before we joined up with them, during a year when there was a big push for a major reform of some criminal justice law in the state. I think it started with a governor at the time, and there was some funding. I mean, there's just this whole big package. And so all this coalition came together, and each in their own individual ways were showing up at the legislature, talking to different people, and a lot of that was able to push through, some of which even actually helped people on the registry. We tried, most of it didn't, but we tried. But at that point, we got involved and have continued to stay involved and help out where we can. Working on the holding hands. There's a fear among the different groups that if they include persons on the registry in a reform, it's going to kill a bill. So part of why I'm there, and one of the things that I recurringly say is, we're here to make sure there's no exclusion, and that we try to introduce the bill with no exclusion, if we can pull this off. If there's pushback, if somebody says, oh my God, we can't do it, then add an exclusion. But it can go through with none, because it's not there, so nobody's noticing that there's. So it's like, start with nothing there, give it a try, and so we're seeing a little help with that. But that's been a part of our role there. It's been it's been a positive experience in just helping to broaden the scope and make people realize the harm that comes, from the exclusion that can happen, and that all categories of people with offenses need to get those same reforms. So that's an experience that I've had. It's definitely been a learning experience and a broadening experience for me. Amber?
So I've been working on coalitions for a really, really long time, even before our lives were turned upside down and I got into advocacy. So in the healthcare arena, there are a lot of different things that they do in coalition to deal with public health issues, which makes it a really interesting perspective, because when we think about sexual harm and we think about criminal legal reform issues and how those interlock, it really is a public health issue that's being handled the wrong way. And so one of the things that's most valuable about some of those lessons is taking a step outside of our sort of advocacy bubble and looking at coalitions in a different way of how people come together and those different stakeholders that can come together. So when you talk about the kinds of coalitions, you may have a very small coalition. I've been part of like community-based coalitions that are, regional or county-wide, when you talk about getting all the stakeholders involved in a particular issue. Then you have statewide coalitions, which usually have sort of those steering people, like the steering committee, or a group of organizations that are the lead organizations for a coalition. Then you have, I've been part of coalitions that were actually created as a separate organization with funding because a grant person decided that this is what they wanted, is they want to see people working together, so we're going to create this coalition. I'll be honest with you, that way of doing things, giving people money and saying, okay, work together, make a coalition, that's probably been the least successful that I've seen in my travels. But the most successful coalitions that I've been a part of, particularly in the advocacy space, really they have good leadership, and they come together around a very particular purpose. And you can have coalitions that are around a policy, like we've been talking about, tiered registry, or working on a particular issue. And then you have coalitions that come together around the issue area, and then their goals and their priorities change based on what is happening for that issue at the time. So when we talk about that, that's really valuable in our movement, because we know that there are so many layers and so many issues. So if we're coming together and we're really creating a good infrastructure, then that is going to allow us to fight the fight for the long haul that we know. In New York, everybody does everything in coalition. And it has its good and bad. But to Brenda's point about, showing up to make sure that our voices are in the room is very, very important, but also showing up for your coalition partners when they are working on things that maybe you say, oh, that doesn't necessarily pertain to us, which is usually pretty rare because everything in criminal justice pertains to us, whether we want to believe it or not. But it's showing up for them as well as showing up to make sure that our voices are heard in whatever issue. So those are some of, my experiences with coalition.
Thank you. All right, hopefully I'm going to click the button here, and in just a moment, folks will see a new question. Let's see if this works. It may take a second. Last time I actually had to refresh it. Let me know if it's showing up on. Good. All right. So here you get to pick, again, kind of a multiple choice, and we'll kind of see who's doing what. What's the main reason you're attending the workshop? I think I should have done this at the beginning, but that's okay. Well, they'll do it now and then move on. Huh? I see. Yeah, we're getting little thumbs up. You can see them on the screen. People like this question.
Somebody likes it.
Yep, somebody likes the question. Here they come in. Say we're new with this, so we're like, oh, look at that. Cool little thumbs up buttons there. Learning how to build one, and just generally learning what coalitions are. We've kind of touched on that part already. So maybe we could check in again a little bit. How can a coalition help our movement? What can we add that we haven't shared already?
So I think that in our movement, we have a lot of dedicated people and skilled people, and also organizations that are doing amazing work. And one of the things that we really need is to, again, build power. So in order to have people engaged in advocacy in a more meaningful way and a larger way across the country, and build power, change narrative, I think that is the main thing that a coalition can do for our movement. Because, again, just to give an example, we are building a national coalition, And we're just in the forming stages, but we've had this situation in Louisiana that became very public. Somehow, the news really picked it up. NARSOL did some great press on it. We were quoted, all of those things. So we had the opportunity, because we were already building this coalition, to reach out to everyone and get people to sign on to a letter to send to the governor. He has till like tomorrow or some such to veto it. We don't think he's going to veto it, but now, there is this entity. I'm sorry, did somebody just say?
I think he may have already. I think he signed it.
Okay, so anyway, but my point is, in this situation, is that we were able to deploy this letter in a very quick manner, get it out to organizations, get everyone to sign it, get it over. So we know that we did everything that we could, and that also establishes the trust building between the organizations, and we're building those communications. So again, when you're talking about building power together, we had a lot of action alerts that went out to all the different organizations and individual people, and there's a place for that, reaching out in regard to that issue and multiple other issues. But when you have a group of 35 organizations and, you can get, grow and grow and grow, then you're speaking with more power and influence than you are with, one organization doing something.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, okay. Didn't want to
I'm
stop
done.
you.
I'm
Okay.
done.
I realized that there was something on this handout that I really just wanted to touch on, to me, that jumped out. I mean, it's the quotation down on the bottom corner here, that one of the things that we found is that mobilizing large numbers of people, demonstrating wide support for an issue, is one of the most ways that they are most successful. I'm trying to condense it. That's what helped to really make a movement successful, was when you could demonstrate that kind of mobilization, and they're less successful when there is no such coalition. And I thought that was really important. I mean, I knew about the whole power and voice, but the fact that you can actually have success or failure based on creating a coalition, I thought that was pretty impressive. Anything you want to add to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course. So one of the challenges that I swear any group of people has is trying to focus, right? So, oh my gosh, we have so many issues, don't we? Right? And so there's a stupid joke out there about, believe it or not, nudist camp, where a mosquito in a nudist camp. The question is, where do you start? There's so many opportunities, right? And so for our own organization, the Alliance for Constitutional Sex Offense Laws, we had that problem. In California, we have over 104,000 people on the registry. 104,000. In our county of Los Angeles only, it's over 20,000 people. That's more people than many states have on the registry in one county. Okay, so the question is, where do you start, right? And the reason it's so important to figure out where to start is because, guess what? There's always limited resources. And I don't know about your organization, but we've applied for some grants, and guess how many we've gotten? 0. Okay, so we had to, at the very beginning, figure out what it is we could do with the limited amount of money. We're still asking that question, even though we have a bigger treasury. And in the very beginning, we're like, oh yeah, litigation. Oh yeah, we have 5 lawyers on our board, so we might see things as through that prism. And the question was, I mean, believe it or not, I did not plan to litigate. I didn't. My background was a federal government attorney. And when you're a federal government attorney, you don't file lawsuits, you defend the government against lawsuits. By the way, never in this area. I was in aerospace. I'm a space cadet. I'm still there. So I'm cheering on the space program. But the fact is that I called a whole lot of attorneys, and like nobody wanted to touch this issue. Nobody. Nobody wanted to get engaged, with one exception, a woman attorney. She had great credentials. And then when I said, and how much would this cost? And she said, $250,000 for one lawsuit. And I thought, how much time is it going to take me to raise $250,000? And I'm like, surely I can figure this out. Okay, so time to get out the law books. And since that point in time, that's what we've done. And we've filed over 100 lawsuits. We have made significant changes in the state of California. I still think California is the friendliest place for a registrant to live. It's not the cheapest place, but it's the friendliest place. So, but the fact is, we had to figure out what lawsuit came first, right? And so we came up with the term low-hanging fruit. And so for all of you, whether it's your individual organization or your coalition, you really need to figure out what is the lowest hanging fruit. And this is why you have limited resources. And when you do that and you win, you build credibility. So an example that I can come up with, you're all going to get out the squirt bottles.
Yeah, it's about time for the squirt bottle. We're about to move on the next one here. But
no, but it just happens to be that I've sued the Department of Corrections so many times, and I've won every time. This last time when I sued them, they said, okay, we realized we made a mistake. What does it take to correct the mistake, right? It was $30,000 and some changes, some new regulations.
There you go.
So it can be done, but please, whatever it is, again, individual organizations or coalitions, spend some time in the beginning to focus.
To focus in.
Maybe it's like shooting at the shooting range. I think the first thing you do is you aim it, right, before you pull the trigger.
Okay. All right. Great. All right. So I did go ahead since Janice has kind of led us into this anyway. What do you see as the biggest challenges to building a successful organization? Janice has already mentioned the importance of focus, and we're seeing some other folks come in here with suggestions. So if you have not yet, feel free to add your responses to this. And boy, there's a lot more than when the three of us were testing, isn't there?
I don't see bananas.
I see money right smack in the middle. Like, yeah, that was one of the ones that I was going to look at, which is the problem. The interesting thing that I was going to mention money as a possible challenge. It's not necessarily getting the money, but sharing the money that can be a problem with a coalition. As soon as you add money into a mix, then all the different groups are like, wait a minute, they're going to take our money and do this thing with it. How, it's like, and it goes over to Amber's thing about trust, right? So taking something to a board and say, well, they're just trying to get our members, or they're just trying to get, access to our dollars and so on. And it's still an us versus them. So, and money is one of those, money is wonderful when you've got it, and boy, it's divisive as well. So what I've found helped so far as we've had conversations in groups that I've been in where we're trying to build and be a part of a coalition is to remind people that this is a shared effort that we're investing in, and kind of change that picture, that it's not an us versus them, it's a we, and that we together are going to invest in a very specific thing, and everybody is working together with it. What are some other folks seeing on the period in terms of responses, communication, public opinion? Anybody wants time?
Saying time. I really want to talk about time, because I think that we all have a lot of sort of smaller organizations. There are larger organizations, but the time to do things when we're so overwhelmed with running our organizations and all of those things, capacity is one of the things that people talk about. Is I can't participate in a coalition because we just don't have the capacity. We can barely run the organization that we already have, and that's a very real struggle that we need to be cognizant of and think about. And so it goes back to, having more than one representative to a coalition, being very, setting the infrastructure, to Brenda's point about the trust building, having shared agreements about what it means to be part of the coalition, how we're going to interact together, and coming with best intentions. We have a lot of different skill sets, personalities, backgrounds, trauma histories in our movement. And we need to be looking at all of those things as assets rather than seeing them as things that divide us. So I think all of those things make sense. And this cloud is really like growing. And I think that that tells us that, you know, people have ideas about the challenges, but I would venture to say that everybody who has ideas about challenges also has ideas about solutions. And so that's what's really exciting.
Right, and that is time for our next handout. We are, like I say, we're moving into that. We have a few ideas in terms of solutions as well. That we can look as we're passing it out, though, about some of these other things. The competition I kind of touched on a little bit. Egos, leadership. I'm trying to pick out some things that kind of go together. Personal agendas, right? You know, so again, it all involves that trust building and finding a way to cooperate. I see some things like coming up with the competition.
Also unity.
Yeah, the unity is one of the bigger ones. Is like is the challenge unity, or is unity what we're trying to achieve? And it's hard to achieve the unity, right? So I know, you know, Amber was mentioning the importance of having a smaller goal, and you did as well. You know, in your case, you're talking lawsuits, pick that low-hanging fruit, and one of the things you'll see in the handout as you're looking down the list is they're recommending in that list, oh, look, you've got, you know, we have so many problems with the registry, but you can't take a coalition and do all the things. NARSOL, for example, you know, if you go and take a look at our goals and our you know, we've got 10 different goals on there. We're not doing all those goals right now. We don't have the resources. That's just one organization. But each year we get together for an annual retreat, and the board looks over all those goals. And okay, what did we accomplish last year? What can we focus on this year that's going to help move the needle? It may be a fairly small thing, but you know, every year we focus in so that we've got some direction, and then we spend the rest of the year making sure we remember what it was we agreed to do, because that's human beings.
No, Brenda, one of the things that I've seen happen over the years, and Brenda and I have known each other for quite a long time,
Yeah.
right now, and the fact is, before, there was a point in time I was not willing to say the word abolition. I just wasn't. And I really thought that the minute we said abolition of the registry, by the way, we were sunk, you know, as an organization, as a litigator. But over the years, I've gotten more comfortable with the word. And now that is my ultimate goal, is abolishing the registry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it's not just me, it's not just ACSOL, it's all of us. We have that as a goal. Mm-hmm. And so when I talked earlier, it's like, and one of our speakers earlier today, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was, but said, you know, there's different ways to get there. There's incrementalism, and then there's what I call pulling the pin on the grenade. And folks, I just want you to know, pulling the pin on the grenade is really dangerous. People can really get hurt. And I know I'm thinking through the prism of litigation, but another case like Smith versus Doe, another decision like Smith versus Doe, we've lived with that turkey for 22 years now, right? We can't, I don't know, it would be terrible if we had another decision like Smith versus Doe.
If you had another one, yes.
But the good thing here is I think we're all now focused on abolition, okay? Mm-hmm. We all realize that. And when I ask if everybody is, please, if one organization's strength is incrementalism, let them do incrementalism. That would be ours. If there's other organizations out there that want to pull pins on the grenades, please do it carefully. Okay. Thank you.
Any other things that, Amber, that you want to mention specifically? And could somebody bring up one of those to me, that handout? Because I forgot to bring one up here. So I can remind myself what the heck we're talking about. There we go. Thank you. There we go. So you maybe share a few.
Yeah, so I think, Janice, I love that you said that you have abolition in your mind, and I think that it was Kim from the ACLU that mentioned that there is space for all of these things. it is important to know that when we're talking about incrementalism and we're talking about abolition, that, again, that there is space for all of that. But on the way, if we are doing incremental things that make abolition harder, then we really need to critically think about that. So when you think about, pulling that pin that you're talking about, by the same token, if you get too incremental, you create bad policy that makes abolition impossible. So that's why it's amazing to be in coalition and conversation and come together, because we have all of those different perspectives so that we can have conversations like these and come somewhere where we're all doing this together. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
No, you brought up.
And if you can't notice, incrementalist, abolitionist.
Incrementalist in the middle. No, I'm an incrementalist too, actually. But the thing is, you can be an incrementalist and be an abolitionist. If you go
100%.
right. Yeah. I mean, you go on on the NARSOL website, and you're going to see that we believe in abolishing the registry. But day to day, our focus is on what can we do right now that will help move the needle, and that's where the incremental comes in. So it's like,
It's
we're fine.
necessary. You have to we have to change people's lives today because people are suffering.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure that we're doing that on the way to abolition.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to mention, you brought up an interesting example at both of you when you were talking about the pulling the plug and possibly actually making things worse. A quick example might be a bad bill in the legislature that I was trying to argue. It was one of the cases where there was a law. They were trying to put a bill out that had exclusion for persons on the registry, and they were like, "Well, you can just come back next year, right? Right? Yeah. Okay. Those of you who've done
Clean slate
lobbying
in New York.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. So, like, those of you who are done lobbying, it sounds nice and logical. Sure, okay, we'll take what we can get and go next time. Okay, so does it sound like it's an increment? Yeah. But have you ever tried to introduce a bill that says we're going to now add in people on the registry to have this wonderful thing that everybody got last year? No. It will not happen because nobody's going to stick their neck out that far. And I said, this is where I was like, let's just introduce it with nothing. Anyway, I won't go off on a tangent on lobbying. You might have to get your squirt gun on me. So is there anything else in terms of our challenges? We were looking at some of the barriers and things that we handed out here that we want to touch on. How do you craft an MOU? Well, that's a good point. That's part of it is, again, the goal setting. And also, I think that's a part of what Amber keeps mentioning in terms of building trust, is that as a group gels and meets and has sometimes what feels like really interminable conversations about getting to know you, where the action-focused, the A people, are like, let's do something, but first you've got to figure out who everybody is and where everybody is. But once you do that, then you can start breaking into those groups, come up with a little bit of structure, have a steering committee, yada, yada. Anything else here?
Yeah, there's a book I'd like to recommend to everybody. The book is called The Engines of Liberty and is written by David Cole, who was the ACLU, the head of litigation for ACLU. I don't know if he's still there or not.
He still is.
Okay. So he uses 4 case studies in his book. And one of them is gay marriage. I don't even remember what the other 3 are. But I thought the really important message about that was, because he talks about there's many diverse groups coming together, and they all had one goal. Okay, and their one goal was to legalize gay marriage. Just kind of like, for us, our one goal is to abolish the registry. And it talked about how different organizations approached it differently, right? And they weren't sure who was actually going to cross the finish line. And it was a surprise to many people who did it. I can't even tell you, but I just remember Hawaii, and one day it's like, oh yeah, we're going to go to Hawaii because Hawaii is going to be favorable. It's going to be easy to do it. And it was a belly flop, okay? But I think we just, again, it's like we've kind of got to let each other do our own thing as long as we don't hurt others, do no harm to others. Yep. But the fact is, if we keep thinking abolition, I think that we will get there. I really do think that we're going to get there.
Sure.
I wish I could tell you when.
Yep.
But we'll get there. Called Engines of Liberty.
Engines of Liberty.
And the author is David Cole, C-O-L-E.
Can I just mention, because and I'll do it briefly. I'll do it briefly, Brenda.
no
It made
problem.
me really think about the idea of strategy, and that is one of the largest benefits of having a coalition, because it can help with more information and more communication and people doing different things. It can help develop strategy for the movement. And that's what happened, David does reference that in his book, and that's what happens across the ACLU all the time, because there is an affiliate in every state, there are resources, and there's a communication infrastructure. So people can say, hey, what's going on in your state? Have you litigated this? And so, like, when it comes to litigation, when it comes to advocacy, we can be sharing written testimony amongst the organizations, because something that popped up in one state definitely is going to pop up in another state. So all of those things are benefits in terms of developing a strategy that will get us closer to abolition faster and more effectively.
Right. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on, and got another audience participation thing here. If I click my little keypad in the right place, yeah, it breaks across the page. So now we've talked a little about it all. So let's get a little more specific. What do you see as the biggest benefit for our specific movement in terms of a coalition of groups? Where would you think that those benefits are best? And again, yep, boy, they're coming right in here. Okay, they're ready for this one. So we've got sharing of resources, speaking in a more unified voice, changing the public narrative, increased access to media and legislatures, furthering power and influence. Those are the options that the three of us came up with to toss out there for you to pick, cast your vote. What you think is the best one? I have no idea if you can go back and change it later. But right now, changing the public narrative is up there almost neck and neck with furthering power and influence. So those are the two that people are especially focused on. So so just taking a moment here to watch and see who else. Everybody's pretty much voted. They're not jiggling quite so much anymore. Who would like to respond, add some thoughts on where we are? I mean, this is a vote. It's a chance for all of us, I guess, up here as leaders of organizations. Like, okay, how do we tie in?
Well, I'd like to talk about one thing, and I heard several speakers today expressing that they didn't feel like they belonged, right? You're an outsider, you're an outlier, or whatever, and there's not a sense of belonging. And I think one of the greatest things about these organizations together, well, separately and together, is providing a sense of community, right? I mean, you have some place where you can go, where you know you're not going to be judged, where you know people are actually there to help you and to give you hope. And we had a real great experience of that earlier this year in Washington, D.C., where several states came together, representatives from several states. We were outside on the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court, and we were reminding the Supreme Court that they made a terrible decision of Smith versus Doe, right? And this is something that, and we knew too, coming together, that we were going to be protected. They were going to watch each other's backs and stuff like that. And it was such, I wish some more people from that were there were here right now. But if you ever looked on our website, you'll see we all raised our fists like this for a picture, right? That's not what we did the whole time at all. But just that sense of empowerment, that, coming together as a community, and that we have people who care, who support each other, and just that sense of community.
Okay, I was just checking where that was in one of these sheets. Is that like the public narrative part or the?
I think it's further power and influence. I mean, folks, how can we feel power, if we feel powerless?
True.
And I know, like, when we go to our state legislature, time and time after again, the people who go for the first time, they feel they're better. They feel empowered. They like, you mean somebody has to actually listen to me? I express my point of view. And then the answer is yes. We elect these people. They need to listen to us.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so I think that's exactly right. When you talk about getting people engaged, because as we've seen by sort of the broad things, even within this conference, people have different strengths. And so we have organizations that do support like really, really well, right? And so sharing, when you talk about, sharing resources, I see that, it's kind of lower on the thing because people get a little scared about sharing resources. But resources are not always money. Resources might be training. So when people want to get involved, maybe one organization does training like really well to help people analyze bills, to help people know, about self-healing, to have support, to, how to write an op-ed, all of those kind of things. So when we're talking about sharing and sharing resources and communication, that helps us, all of these kind of play into one another. That helps us speak with a unified voice because we're talking to each other and we're hearing what other people are saying, and we're getting a more unified voice. We're changing the public narrative because people are empowered. So whether they're writing an op-ed or they're talking to their neighbor who is shocked because they knew nothing about it, they have the tools to do it. And so you are increasing access to media and legislatures because you're getting more people involved, and those people have more people, and that just exponentially grows. And then the more people you have, the more politicians take notice, and that creates more power and influence. So all of those things really go together. But Janice, you really nailed it on the head when you said, how many people have had that experience, like the first time that you realized that you could take your power back and you can say to a politician, I matter. And you can say, I don't have to hide in shame. Somebody cares about me and I have some power to do something about it. That is where we have to get everybody to. So I'm sorry I got a little passionate.
Hey, carried away. This is the place to do it. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add other than to say an amen to it, just in terms of what we see here, because I think you're right to change that narrative, to further the power. I do see that same thing in my groups when even just showing up sometimes to a fearless meeting or a support, whatever your support circles or whatever you've got, just getting there, it can be terrifying to people because they're just so convinced, they're so used to being judged that just showing up can be this major, major lift. And then they get there and it's like, hi. And just even that is a freeing experience. It's like a microcosm of what we've been getting here, right? So it's that moment that, hey, I can say something about my situation. I can say something about my lived experience, and lightning is not striking. That I'm still alive. I'm going to go home and feel better about myself, and add that to showing up at a legislative office and, sharing your story with a legislator. Oh my gosh, you can multiply that 10, 100 times. You show up there and they listen to you. They may not agree, but they've listened to you. You've said something or you've testified at a hearing. And it's like, wow, I have done a thing and it's a value. Yeah, so it's definitely. So there's my stump speech. All right. So we'll have plenty of time for questions. We go to 5:30, right? I think we've got.
That's 5:15.
5:30. Yeah, we started at 4:15, but I think we got to 5:30.
Okay.
So we're doing good for questions. The last thing we do have. We don't have any more questions other than at the end we'll let the folks ask questions online when I pull the next one up. But just kind of in conclusion, back at the beginning, I noticed, one of the big things that people wanted to know was what is happening now as far as coalition. So we're each going to touch a little bit on, and you already did. You got your dig in early, so you'll have to keep yours brief. No, just kidding. But we're going to talk a little bit about some of the coalition experiences that are happening right now in our movement. And so we'll start with Amber.
Okay, so I see a lot of people who already know a little bit about. We don't have an official name because we're still in the forming stage of the nationwide coalition for registry abolition. And so this is a group right now. We have almost 30 organizations that are coming together to form this coalition to talk about how we can get to, and again, build that power and influence to get to a point of registry abolition. Now, to speak to Janice's point, we will be we're being very intentional about creating structure, about building trust, making agreements with one another of how we're going to interact and all of those things. And so, some of the things that we've heard is this has been tried before, don't do this, it's really hard, all of those things. But I'm really happy to report we've had several meetings and people are so fired up and so excited and ready to really come together. So we are co-creating this all together, and that is what is so exciting. We right now are meeting on the third Thursday of every month. We may stretch that out once we get a little bit more organized and start working on projects. But while we're in the forming stage, it's the third Thursday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern time, so whatever that is in other time zones. And so what we're asking is that if your organization would like to be a part of that, you can reach out to myself. And right now, again, we're in the process of building the steering committee and all of those things. And we are asking that, there's only one representative per organization, so it doesn't get too unwieldy. But we had, in the last meeting, people really talked about what they wanted to get out of coalition, what they were excited to bring to the table. And just in that, short meeting, it became very, very clear the power that working together can have. So it's very exciting. So with that, I think I'm done talking about it.
Great. Thanks, Amber.
I'm not really done talking about it, but in this context, I'm done talking about it.
Yeah, we're real excited to be a part of that. We have we do have a couple of people, one kind of for a state and one but two people on our board are attending for one reason or another. So we've been watching that. So just, real quickly, you were going to talk about the vigil a little bit.
I was. So I'll just mention again another commercial. March 5th of next year, please come to the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court and let John Roberts know that he made a mistake. And so for those of you who don't know, John Roberts was the attorney representing the state of Alaska in the case of Smith versus Doe. Mm-hmm. And when he was asked, and I'm paraphrasing, it's not quoting, but when he was asked, isn't registering as a sex offender, isn't that like applying for membership at Price Club? Okay? And you know what he said? He said, yeah, it is. So the reason I bring this up is he's the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court now, right? And so I think that Chief Justice Roberts, we need to treat him like a puppy that we're training. Okay, and when a puppy makes a mess, you rub their nose in it, and you tell them, don't do it again. Now, unlike a puppy, he can actually clean up his own mess, and that's what we're inviting him to do. Clean up your own mess, John Roberts, and get this Smith versus Doe overturned. I don't care who the members of the Supreme Court are, who's going to do what. I don't really care. But you know what? It needs some leadership over there, and whoever's there, if they're willing to pick up the trash, I'm going to support them.
All right. I will mention that what I've heard about this vigil also is that we are trying to work on this to be, you guys are working on it. I'm not directly involved at this point, but that it be, again, a
Multi-state.
multi-state, multi-group. So again, as it evolves, it's not just like an ACSOL thing or a NARSOL
Not at
thing or yeah, it's whatever. It's just, it is another opportunity for groups to get together with that particular focus in mind. So just to kind of pull it back into into the coalition thing.
And look, folks, this is the reason that decision is so awful. Okay, it basically says that registration is not punishment, and therefore it allows government at every level, city, county, state, and federal, to pass new laws and apply them retroactively. So think about it. You think today is bad? Who knows what tomorrow is going to be, because those turkeys are out there passing new laws all the time, right? So
Yep.
that's why Smith versus Doe needs to be overturned.
Right?
So just bringing back to the idea of coalition, something like the DC Vigil, again, multi-state, having more people show up and be in the space and have a show of power and influence is the idea. So supporting things like DC Vigil or things that are happening across the country in a way that is meaningful, in a way that is comfortable for your organization, and you have the capacity to do. So again, 1,000 people standing on the steps is more effective than
10.
10 people standing on the steps. So
I think we
just
had
keep
20
in
the year
mind,
before, so, yeah.
being able to show up. It also takes resources to get to DC. So the further ahead you know about it and the more organizing you do around it, the more effective it's going to be. So again, that is the power of working in coalition.
Coalition, yeah. So the one little thing I wanted to share is that a number of state affiliates of NARSOL are also currently working on an alliance right now to pull together in the area of messaging, where so they are specifically working on their own, where the board has given them a blessing, and we're going to match their funds up to a certain amount. But the idea was to try to pull together, come up with what they could see as a unified message that lots of groups could get behind, and with the goal to come up, okay, well, it could be as simple as registries are bad, but obviously we want to get one that gets beyond the choir, because a lot of the problem we have now with public messaging is that we are not successfully getting beyond the choir. So their goal was to try to get beyond the choir and figure out what that messaging is, and then actually see if we can actually maybe afford a PR firm. This may be still above anybody's level because they're very expensive, but we were going to try to give it a shot. So that particular group, again, right now it's NARSOL affiliates, at the state level, affiliates and associated groups are getting together to talk about that, and that's still in progress. We'll see what's coming of it. They've gotten together a number of times, come up with what they think is a decent message. Kind of things went out to potential PR firms. We'll see how it goes, and if progress is made on it, I'm quite sure it will open out beyond that, but we're not at that point right now. We do. We already have people lining up for questions. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll pull up the last one here on the screen so that the folks who are remote can also, I think, pop questions on here. We may not be able to get to everybody on here. Keep pushing in the wrong part on this little button. There we go. And I'll skip that one, I think. So let me just see if I can move on. There we go. No, I didn't want to go to the end of the conversation. Can I go back?
No, maybe not.
Maybe not. Push the button too hard.
We'll have to take
it out there, but Andy's got at least one that he brought in, I know from the video. Yes, please, go ahead.
And it's super quick, but does NARSOL have a resource list for what we would consider to be state chapters? I think that's probably super easy for you to answer.
A resource list for state chapters, which I assume means that if you're looking for a state chapter, where to go find it? Do we know?
Are resources available to state affiliates?
Yeah, that's what I wasn't sure
I'm
which is which.
personally reading it as, is there a page that says, here's a contact, here's an affiliate, That's what I'm thinking of.
Okay, yeah, well, one thing I can tell you we have, if that was the question, is, yeah, you can go on the NARSOL website, and if the group is either an affiliate or an associated group, which is a fairly new category, those are organizations that are established well enough that we know they're still going to be around, tomorrow or next year. Those you can find on the website under About Us. If a state is represented by a very small group, an individual, we don't post that information on the website because it's personal information, and we're happy to have them there, but we don't want them exposed more widely. So, but in that case, you contact us, and we'll put you through to those people. So hopefully that's what we're looking for. Yes, we do provide resources. In case that was what we wanted, we do try to provide resources to our groups where we have that opportunity. Over this side.
Hi, I'm hoping you could give me a little clarification on the coalition that's building. I understand that the primary goal is to is for abolishing the registry. And I don't think there's a person in this room that doesn't agree that the registry needs to be abolished. But where my questions are, I guess, is Amber, you said something earlier. You said that we have to change people's lives today because people are suffering. And there's no doubt that it's absolute hell being on the registry. But there's a pretty decent sized group of people who have loved ones incarcerated in this room right now. And in fact, the draft letter for the coalition's first letter that went to the governor of Louisiana, or the governor, as we like to call him, was written by a team of 4 women with loved ones who are incarcerated in federal. They're adults in custody, in federal custody. So I guess what my question for you would be is that what about us? Well, even though your primary goal is to abolish the registry, we have people. Let me ask a quick question. How many people in this room are impacted by a loved one who is incarcerated for a sex offense? Pretty big group.
Yeah, pretty big group.
And what we want to know is, will you be advocating for our group as well?
So I really appreciate that question, because when we talk about abolishing the registry, that is the registry regime. And the registry regime includes the exorbitant and lengthy sentences and everything that goes along with excluding people in prison from programs because of the nature of their offense, and onerous probation conditions, and all of those things. So now, Janice mentioned, we have to focus and this and that, but I can assure you that the national coalition that is building, the intention is to work on things that will both improve people's lives today, but work towards abolition. And when we say abolition of the registry, we mean abolition of the registry regime and all of the harm that's associated with it. So we see you, we hear you, and we are here for you.
Because we have people that have some loved ones with some really long out dates. In the registry, yes, they'll be eventually on the registry, but some have out dates of like 2040.
Yeah, right.
So right now, that's not their big priority, but they all want it to be we all want it to be gone when they get out. So.
Absolutely.
100%.
So thank you. That makes me feel so much better.
Yeah. I could just I got involved in this movement because I had a loved one inside, and one of the things that I said at that time was, I promised him that I was going to work hard on the outside for when he got out, right? So luckily I did not have that long of a time. He is out now, but yeah, I'm with you. Right.
I just want to acknowledge that Elena was involved in writing that letter and thank her for that. Again, there are so many skill sets and so many people that are working from different angles for different reasons.
Yeah.
And doing it together, we can absolutely do more.
Move the needle. Janice will be back. She had to step out for a minute. Go ahead, Helen.
You mentioned the struggles of getting the messaging beyond the choir, which I think is understandably pretty difficult whenever any of the messaging involves improving the lives of people who are convicted for sex offenses. But there are different goals that a coalition might be interested in pursuing. I think one of the big ones is diversion and proactive measures to try and prevent and divert young people who may be at risk of being involved in committing sexual
I got
harm.
the questions.
In order to address that and be of some proactive improvement, and that messaging may be easier to resonate to a larger audience beyond this one. Would you have any thoughts or interest in focusing on those alternative goals that might be of broader outreach to, in that way, strengthen the overall goals of the coalition?
So, are you referring to the nationwide coalition? Is that question for me, or is that a general question?
Yeah, I mean, basically just, is it something that you've thought about as worthwhile to focus on issues that you can work on that might have more broad support with the general public in order to, in that way, develop on the support for the overall goals?
So my response to that, and so just to be clear, I'm not involved with the unified messaging that the NARSOL groups are working on. So I'm sure that somebody can speak to that. But what I have to say about that is the national coalition that we're building, the intention is not to only have anti-registry groups in it. So when you're talking about messaging that will resonate outside of the choir, you want to be talking to people who are working in homelessness, in healthcare, in all of these other things, so that the messaging can be developed. Yes, our goal is to abolish the registry and everything associated with it, but who are we talking to? And so a coalition can't do everything, right? So like, that's why we need these people at the table, so that they understand the issue and they're working in coalition with us to develop that messaging that we can then all share together to get outside of the choir. So that's my thoughts on that. And I know I see Gail over there who is involved in the NARSOL group. So
Yeah.
Would you consider using a different word other than abolition? Because it's a very loaded word. I can already see the New York Times and every social media thing similar to defund the police, which was a nightmare because nobody really meant defund the police. So I would just urge you to be very cautious with a word like that we understand, but other people will be very reactive about.
we haven't named the coalition yet. So we appreciate any and all input. That is what we are internally calling it as we co-create it. So, but we are very cognizant of language and engaging, different expertise in that way. But thank you for that question.
Gail?
Hello, thank you. Thank you for this conversation. I just wanted to clarify a little bit. The leaders group, those of us that are meeting to talk about, a number of things. The first project that we have embarked on is exploring a PR firm. We have not come up with messaging, believe that's their job. We think they should be holding focus groups and whatnot so that we can find out what will people respond to, because we've all been talking, in terms of everything from the human consequence, the collateral damage. We've talked about the finance, we talk about recidivism, we talk about all of these things, and it's almost like where it comes to the general public, first of all, we're really not out there enough having this conversation because limited by resources and who's going to put their face on this and whose face do we really want to look at. That's a whole nother deal. But we don't know what that message is. I know when I have a one-on-one conversation with somebody, I don't know that I completely change their mind, but I can influence them enough to maybe think about it differently because they haven't thought about it in its totality. It's just more of this like visceral knee-jerk reaction. Oh, lock them up, throw the key away. These people are irredeemable, and that's what they keep hearing. So we have to figure out what is the narrative we should be using to convey this message to the general public so that it gives cover to the legislators who can actually fix this
Actually fix
nonsense.
it.
So that is what we were working on. The PR firm, that the whole thing is in its really infancy stages.
Infancy. Yeah.
But hopefully, next year we'll have more to talk about. Because it's going to take a while, and then we'll tell you how much money we need.
Yeah, that was for raising money. Thanks for the clarification, Gail. I guess I should have spoken, not that we have a message, but more like what is it that we would like to convey, that the right, so, right. Okay. Gotcha. So, that's fine, but thanks for the clarification. Andy, I pulled it up. Is okay. Nobody's asking any questions. Maybe it died and I have to launch it all over again, but I tried. I've got any questions up on the screen and it's like, nobody's asking. So I'm thinking I must have dropped it and it didn't get back. But thanks for trying. But I wanted to pass back over just to make sure. Yeah. There it went.
I like to think of the different organizations that are in our movement and compare them to the environmental movement. In the environmental movement, you have everything from the Audubon Society to Greenpeace, right? So if you are of a conservative bent and you just want to go learn about birds of prey, there's an organization for you. If you want to go out into the Pacific Ocean and chase Japanese whaling ships, there's an organization for you. And so I don't think there's any harm in having a diversity of organizations working on different parts, as long as we're all coordinated.
Yep.
And so I think, so that's one comment, okay? But there's another thing that I want to say real briefly, and that
Is it a question? I'm just double checking because we've got more people. Just
I
checking
know,
if there's
I
a
know, but-
question. Okay.
I want to point out that there's also a role for demonstrations and vigiling in our movement. And in the past, there hasn't been a place for that. And that's why I'm so excited about Janice's idea of going to Washington, D.C. every year and having a demonstration or a vigil.
Yep.
There's some of us out here who've been demonstrating and vigiling for a lot of our lives on a lot of different issues.
Yep.
And some of us who haven't.
Okay. We
But I
will-
would urge people to do that.
All right. We are going to have to stop. Yeah, I just checked my time. Thanks for that. I'm sorry, the last of you, you're welcome to come up and chat with us afterward. But just a reminder, we were told to move out of here fairly quickly and clean. So if you don't have an immediate question, thank you all for your time. And be sure to clean up on your way out. Thank you.